Is it better to buy and assemble a pre-built closet system like this? Or is it better to build one from scratch like this? Well, today we're gonna find out on Modern Builds. I am super excited for today's episode, and the first segment is gonna be the closet organizer that we purchased. I bought this online from Home Depot. I'm gonna get it all unboxed and see how it looks. All right, and we'll see how long this takes. I think this was a pretty good deal. You can see the price on the screen, and I'll make sure and leave a link down below if you're interested in checking it out. They've got a bunch of different systems and sizes, but the whole idea is this is gonna be our baseline on price, quality, and assembly time, because those are gonna be the three main factors that we're considering if it's better to build or buy a custom closet.
This whole system runs on a French cleat style metal rail that you want to attach to the 2x4 studs behind the drywall. I used a stud finder to find and then mark their location. The cleat that comes with the kit has a ton of holes already drilled into it, and I was really happy that it lined up with quite a few studs behind the wall, 3 on each length. I used my angle grinder to cut the second bracket to length. In fact, I actually made 2 separate cuts on this French cleat piece because I wanted the hole locations to line up right on those 2x4 studs, so I wanted it to shift right a little bit. If I remember correctly in the directions, it said to make sure you have at least 2 screws going into 2x4 studs, otherwise it comes with really heavy-duty toggle bolts rather than drywall anchors, but I'm happy that I didn't need any of those. On the back of the center tower, there's a little cutout that basically looks like it was made with a CNC, but you could honestly just kind of jigsaw your own custom cabinets to go onto a French cleat like this if you wanted. These 2 end pieces go against either wall. This system is designed to be free-floating if you wanted, but mine's fully enclosed. I'm also going to need to go ahead and cut all of my closet rods to length because this is made to adjust to extend a little further than what I'm taking advantage of. After they were cut to length, I drilled through the bracket and then sunk a screw into the closet rod. One of my favorite things about this design is that it's got 2 levels of hanging storage, which is great because I don't have any long things that I really need to hang, so you basically get to hang twice as many shirts, jackets, and everything else. The top shelf is assembled in 3 sections with these shelf pins, just like the middle shelves are going to be in the center tower. The middle shelf is standard, but I cut the left and right parts of the top shelf to length with my circular saw and a 12-inch speed square to make sure that I got a good 90-degree cut. My center tower is centered in the doorway, not necessarily centered in the closet, so I marked and cut each piece to fit.
Boom!
And then down on the bottom of the tower, there was just this little safety cleat that you screw into a stud, and then I also added a screw from the top down for extra security.
This is going great so far. I've got 4 drawers to assemble. I'll record one of them so you can see basically how it goes together, and then we'll start putting these into the tower.
I wasn't expecting to be surprised by any of this assembly, but I had never seen a drawer that goes together like this. I've done folded miters with painter's tape before, but this is a folded miter with veneer. I thought that was super cool, and it got me thinking because you get continuous grain around a drawer, which is pretty much hard to do otherwise. I basically just followed the directions and used the templates for mounting the hardware onto the sides of the drawers, and then I also mounted them onto the center of the tower. I thought it was cool you screw the drawer slides into the same holes that the shelf pins go in. Pretty neat. Finally, the drawers are in, then I could put in the adjustable shelves.
And what's awesome is this shelf should hide the French cleat behind it, and then once clothes are up, you won't see it on either side of the tower too. And it had these handles, but I chose not to use them. I just wanted a little bit more of a clean, sleek look. And this took a total of just over 3 hours. Probably about double what I was expecting, but filming makes things go a little slower. And I could probably do this in an hour and a half if I had to do a second one now that I know how it goes together. If you're not a builder or DIYer, I couldn't recommend this more. What do you think?
Nice, that looks good. I like that. Yeah, there's a lot of room to store stuff in here. This is great, way to go.
Booyah! And now it's time to start the next closet. So the difference with this closet is it's much deeper. It's built into the hallway framing of the house rather than just being a standard depth. This one's 38 inches deep.
So with those new measurements in mind, we could go out into the shop and start by breaking down some plywood on the table saw for our new center tower in the DIY build version of this custom closet. The tower is going to be 18 inches deep, and so that's why you see us ripping 3 18-inch wide pieces out of about a sheet and a half of 3/4 inch plywood.
I personally like the height up to center tower of the closet we bought, and I like how it floats off the ground. That's why I'm cutting the verticals for my build version to the same height, 72 inches. And as always, I'm using my 12-inch speed square to get a 90-degree cut, and I've got a finish blade on the saw to reduce any tear out.
Then I took those offcuts and I cut them to 22.5 inches. This will be the bottom of the tower and then the middle divider. After that, I cut 3 adjustable shelves to the same length. I assembled my case with wood glue and 18 gauge brad nails. I think they were 1.5 inches long. The nails are gonna hold all of my wood in place while the glue dries, which is gonna give a really secure, strong, long-term bond. And another thing you can do that's helpful is use your speed square to mark a line on the outside of your cabinet where you want your brad nails to go. That way you don't accidentally miss your mark. The plywood that I'm cutting here with my circular saw is not only the piece that will be the cleat that we screw to the 2x4 studs, it's also the only thing holding the top together because in the eventual closet build out, I'm gonna have a continuous top shelf. Similar to the buy version though, I want to use shelf pins for the top part of the center tower. And these are the pins I was able to get from Home Depot. I wrapped some painter's tape around my drill bit to make sure that I didn't go too deep, but I just got after it. I sized down my drill bit 1/64 of an inch so I got a really snug fit. I didn't want them to wobble around. And these are inset 1 inch from the front edge and 2 inches from the back.
I just think it's a cleaner look to drill the holes for where you want the shelves to be, but the versatility of being able to move these is awesome. All you have to do is drill a new hole. I do like the look of not seeing all of the pre-drilled hole locations.
But I also get that's just my preference. I'll leave a shelf pin jig below.
Dang it! I don't know why I made this mistake, but this is a 1/2 inch too short. And I don't think I've got the leftover material to make a new shelf without getting a new sheet of plywood, but I do have an idea of how I can add a little bit of wood to this shelf by just gluing a thin strip on. Since this is gonna have a veneer covering the face of the plywood, no one will see this seam from the front. It's funny, there's that phrase I use all the time, you can cut more wood off, but you can't put it back on, but that's what we're doing.
And a second ago I said we're putting veneer on the face of the plywood, but we're putting it on the edge to cover the plies.
So the top of our tower is complete, and now we need to start building the drawers for the bottom.
But first, I'd like to give a big thanks to the sponsor of today's episode, Squarespace. If you need a website or online store, why not build it yourself? I mean, that's really what Modern Builds is all about. And now with Squarespace's Blueprint AI, designing your own website has never been easier. You get guided step by step all the way through to get a customized, tailored website for your brand or business. Not to mention enhanced search engine optimization so that you get found more easily. Squarespace online stores are super powerful, and there are no limits to the number of products that you can sell, whether that's a physical good, a digital good, or a service product. You can take payments in person by connecting the Square card reader to the Squarespace app, so everything is in sync, online, and in store. And there's a ton of payment options for online customers, like using credit cards, PayPal, or Apple Pay. And now in eligible countries, customers can buy now and pay later with Afterpay and ClearPay. Squarespace has also got all the tools for you to create your own course. Build it yourself with Squarespace's help, then set your paywall whether you want that to be a one-time charge or a recurring subscription. You can basically turn your knowledge into income. So to learn more, make sure and follow my link in the description. That's squarespace.com/modernbuilds, where you can build your free trial without entering any of your credit card info. But then when it's time to make your site live, don't forget to use my code ModernBuilds for 10% off your first site, store, or domain through Squarespace. Now let's finish building this closet. And instead of 3/4 inch material, I've got some 1/2 inch, basically birch. And unfortunately, this time cutting, my dad wasn't around for outfeed support, but I did have some of these roller stands, and I could not suggest picking some up more. I definitely need to build a good outfeed table to match this table saw, but there's no way I would be breaking down full sheets without help if I didn't have these stands. And if you're curious, I'll have 3 drawers where the side wall is 6 inches tall, and then I'll have the top one where it's only 3 inches tall. And when you're cutting your pieces, make sure to account for your drawer hardware. For my setup, I needed my drawers to be 1 inch less wide than the actual cabinet opening. I cut these pieces so the finished outside diameter would be 18 inches deep and 21.5 inches wide.
I also cut the front and back pieces for the short drawer, but forgot to click record. My bad.
Now it's time to lower the table saw blade to about halfway through the thickness of our drawer material. This is where the bottom is gonna slide in. This type of groove is called a rabbet joint, and you create it by taking multiple passes, moving the table saw in or out just a little bit to widen that groove by the thickness of the blade. Just make sure when you're doing any task like this, you're taking into account where the blade is at all times, even though sometimes you can't see it because it's not going all the way through the material. And check that out, perfect fit.
Our front, back, and sides are looking groovy, and now it's time to go ahead and cut the bottom panel, and I'm gonna do this out of that 1/4-inch sheet of plywood we saw a second ago.
And if you're interested, I'll make sure and leave links down below to all the materials, supplies, and tools for this project. That way, if you wanna build something similar, you know what you need to use. If you remember assembling those bot drawers, well, the build ones are kind of similar, except we don't have that whole fancy folding miter. Instead, we've got butt joints and a brad nailer. This whole thing worked out great though. Everything connected really nice and was 90 degrees right off the bat. For me, the sides of the drawer are on the outside of the butt joint. That way the visible portions of the rabbet groove are facing forwards and backwards. And on the front, it's gonna get covered with a drawer face. And on the back, well, it's just facing the wall. Now that is super pro.
So now, drawers are complete and we've just got a couple more steps until we're finished. First, I need to apply iron-on edge banding to any of the exposed plywood edges. This will help make things look nicer, and it's easy to trim off the excess using a sharp razor blade or utility knife.
This stuff can be a little tricky though until you get the hang of it. You want to find the right amount of time to use the iron so that you get the adhesive melted and adhered really well, but you don't want it to stick too long and cause any damage to the veneer itself before trimming everything back. And for real, definitely use a sharp blade. I took this as an opportunity to also fill all the nail holes with wood putty and then sand the entire case with 220. The drawer slides that I'm mounting are the cheapest that you can get from Home Depot, but what's awesome is they're pretty much the easiest too because they're bottom mount and they have a really good positive stop for lining them up. And just because these are the more affordable option from Home Depot, it doesn't mean that they're not any good. They hold about 50 pounds per drawer, which is plenty for clothes and stuff like that, and it's what's standard on most furniture. Soft close sides probably would be nice, but I think it would blow our cost comparison.
Drawers are pretty much always a headache for me, but these went really smooth.
Next, I cut all 4 of my drawer fronts, but I saved the 4th drawer front, the top one, which is a little bit more narrow, to cut to size later on.
Say hi to my mom too. Both my parents are making cameos.
I figured us trying to hold this cabinet in place and screw it into the wall would be a bad idea, so I threw a cleat up and screwed our tower into the 2x4 studs. Then I used that same cleat as a support brace on the bottom of our tower, just like on the cabinet that we bought. This also gets tied in with a screw through our plywood. One nice thing about the DIY closet is I'm gonna have a single piece top shelf instead of it being shipped in segments, which is more convenient.
And now let's try and squeeze this top shelf in. Wow! That is super pro.
If your plywood is flaring out a little bit at the top, you could always screw through your top shelf into the cabinet box, but I didn't find that necessary. Plus, after I cut my closet rods to length, I was able to install them in a way that put a little bit of pressure on that plywood, keeping things square. And this is one place where my build closet goes a lot further than my bot closet, which is the strength of the closet rod.
Oh, that's so sturdy.
There's definitely no way I could do a chin up on the other closet rod. It's just thinner material and couldn't handle it.
And now we are actually on the final step. We're gonna get the drawers into the box, and then we're gonna put the drawer fronts on.
I used a couple of little 1/8-inch spacer blocks to make sure that my drawer shelves were aligned and spaced evenly, and I just brad nailed them in place from the back before sinking a couple of screws. I saved cutting this piece to width until now, just in case if my math was wrong, I had a little wiggle room. And I used a hot glue gun to temporarily hold this drawer front in place before I could get my brad nail in, since I didn't have access from the top. And we are done.
So I know this room gets pretty dark, so I apologize for that. Maybe I'll bring in some lights for some after shots. But I am super happy with how everything came out. It's clean, modern, but at the same time, functional. Sometimes form and function can go together. I was able to get a deeper tower than the buying option, more adjustable shelves, and for sure, a more heavy-duty closet rod. And now that I'm thinking about it, I might add a second one down here because I did like it in the other bedroom. As you'll remember, it took about 3 hours to assemble and install the build version of this closet. And on the other hand, it took 2 build days, I would assume somewhere between 12 and 16 hours to build one from scratch. Of course, I saved money, but don't forget, I also did buy a lot of material. The extra shelves and added functionality is a big plus, but I guess the big question is, was it worth it? Well, if we look at the breakdown, we've got our time here and the cost right here, $450 to buy, $200 to build, and honestly, the decision on which is best is up to you. But in my opinion, I had a fun time building this project. It was nice just doing some classic woodworking. So for me, I think building a custom closet from scratch is the way to go. But I also know it took a lot less tools, no workshop space, or build experience to create this. In the comments, let me know your thoughts, build versus buy, and if there's any other cool ideas for the closets that I didn't think about. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe with the notification bell, and we'll see you next time on on Mike's First Flip. It's Mike's First Flip. Woo! Bye, everybody.